Right, going live. Let's try this again. I was just live and it dropped the stream completely. I don't know what happened. Yeah, the thing completely dropped out and just crapped itself. So not sure who was on or what you saw of that, but I'm gonna just try and get it back online and see if we can continue this conversation about the EOS R. So it's saying my stream health is good, running good frames per second's fine, not dropping any frames at the moment as I can see. It's got a question mark around the stream health, but we'll just keep on keeping on and see if I can keep it live. I'll see if my audio is working. I'll just check that on my phone quickly.
Searching for music for your next video?
So that might create.
Then you need to check out our
Watch my ad. All right, cool. So we're back up online, back talking about the EOS R5. Yeah, and I think I was just saying they have got the specs right. It seems like they've really got the specs where they need to be for me to be really interested in this camera. And, you know, I sort of shoot, a lot of what I shoot is on the EOS R, and I'm using C-Log. Majority of what I shoot is now in C-Log because I just kind of, I wouldn't say mastered it yet. I still get some off exposure stuff and stuff I have to fix and correct, and still get some noise in my image and everything. But I've really gotten to a point where I love the image coming out of the C-Log. I've kind of figured out how to grade it and how to make it look really nice and super pleasing and cinematic, more so than say the standard profile or whatever profile you like best in the Canon. And so I love the fact that they've got this implementation in the R5, and I've just picked up another second EOS R body. That's what I'm streaming on now. And so the, you know, I've kind of got the two bodies, and I would even look at, you know, if we're going to hang on to the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, then selling both the bodies to upgrade to the EOS R5. You know, in terms of what I think might not be correct, and if you've got any comments, make sure you throw them on, because I'll be monitoring here as well in the comments. So anything you want to ask, just let me know. Just checking on the stream health again, everything looks good. Yeah, give me a thumbs down if there's no audio, if something's gone wrong, thumbs up if everything's good. So yeah, in terms of where I think this is gonna, I love Canon. I'm sort of a fanboy from way back, you know, started on the 7D and then moved to the 5D Mark II, moved to 5D Mark III, 5D Mark IV, as you probably found me some way through 5D Mark IV or the EOS R content that I put out. So I've sort of journeyed with the prosumer level, I suppose, video implementation with Canon, and they always leave out something. So, you know, on the, let's look at it, on the 7D, that was great. That had 720p, 60 frames per second. So that was really good for its time. The 5D didn't have that at all. I don't think. The 5D3, you know, it was a couple of years later, probably 2, 3, 4 years after the 7D, it had the same 720p, 60 frames per second. So, you know, there's always just something missing. Then the 5D4 had a big crop, and I didn't mind it. I've talked about that in other videos. I kind of worked around it and utilized it to the best of its ability, where I had more reach in, you know, events and weddings and things like that. So I used it to my advantage. But in terms of, yeah, this R5, what I'm kind of waiting for and hoping for, I really hope that they do, yeah, get this sorted and don't leave anything to the last minute. Now, with the 1DX Mark III, it's an amazing camera, and I was like, yep, that's the camera I'm going to get for sure, 100%, no questions about it. And then they dropped it with a $10,000 Aussie dollar. Well, at the time, I think it was $11,900 Aussie, and that was without a card. You hadn't even bought your $1,000 worth of CF Express cards yet. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, they missed it for me on the 1DX Mark III. I guess what that camera really was the 1DC revisited. And, you know, the 1DC came out, it was, you know, 10 or 12 grand, I think it was, for us here in Australia. This is, you know, back in the day. But the 1DX Mark III just missed the mark for me on price because, you know, I'd then rather go for a C200 or the C300 Mark II, or at the time, you know, the C300 Mark II, yeah. So, but now you've got some more players in the game. They just released the C300 Mark III. So there's some other things now where this R5, I feel like where they might miss it is this might land at a price, you know, that's, again, just a little bit out of, you know, at the moment, R5 is an amazing camera. If you're looking at buying a camera right now and you're sort of from the 5D or the 7D and you're still on those cameras, or even if you're on the GH5 or you're on sort of a Sony and you're looking at something different, the EOS R represents unreal value right now. It's only, I mean, I picked up the body with the grip, with a lens, the 35 f1.8 RF, which I'm going to do some more info on as well because I love that lens. It's an amazing lens. But basically, that lens, if you know, if you can get an EOS R and get that lens, that's going to be something that will just be awesome image quality. It's got great image stabilization. It's 1.8 aperture. But anyway, I digress away from what I was talking about. So at the moment, you can pick up something like the EOS R for like $2,000 for the body. You know, and the lens you could probably get for $600. So for $2,500 around about, you can be set up with a banging camera that's going to do you a world of good. So I feel like they're definitely going to miss the mark with that, and they're going to price this at like $4,000 to $5,000. I feel like this is kind of replacing where the 1DX Mark II now sits in that $4,000 to $6,000 secondhand market price range. So then this EOS R5 is going to come out and kind of going to coax you into buying it as a new camera rather than buying like an X 5D Mark IV or a used 1DX Mark II. That's what I'm thinking, and I think $6,000 for me, Aussie dollars, will push this camera a little bit far out of range for many people, and then that makes the EOS R, you know, just the original one, still quite a good purchase. You know, some of the big YouTubers are using them for their vlogs, Matty Apoya, Peter McKinnon, and the image is like matching up well with their C200s and their C500s, and you know, only a keen eye is really going to tell the difference when you've got great glass on these cameras. I'm pointing down here to this, but I'm pointing to the R down here. Just checking the stream health and everything is looking good. Yeah, hey, Galterius, is that how you say your name? Hey, how's it going? Hope you're getting something from the content. And what are your thoughts on, maybe chuck a comment down on your thoughts on the R5 and the specs. I read them out in the stream before that drop, but let me just go through those specs again. So image stabilization, we've only ever had in these kind of level DSLRs, pro DSLRs from Canon, a digital stabilization, which is kind of like a warp stabilization, and it works sometimes and other times it doesn't. Not too bad for vlogging, but you know, not really usable for, not needed for talking head, not really usable for really shaky stuff. But now they're introducing a 5-axis sensor, in-body sensor stabilizer. So that's going to come out first go on the EOS R5, and I'm pretty pumped to see that coupled with the stabilization on the lenses, because what I can say about the 1.8 RF35 lens that I'm shooting this on is it's got really good stabilization. Super good when you marry that with the digital stabilization. You can do really smooth handheld stuff and it doesn't look warped or anything like that. So in terms of that, that's pretty great, I think, to have on this camera with if this works in unison with the IS RF lenses, this thing is going to be mind-blowing what you can do with it handheld. So I'm pretty excited to see Canon's go at that, yeah, as a sort of first go. It's going to have, let's go down to video specs, and this is where I think they just have smashed it out of the ballpark. But again, there might be some caveats here. They're not giving the bit rates and the compression rates and stuff of the image But we know the 1DX Mark III, that was pretty good for, anyone shooting in 10-bit 422. You've got C-Log. So let's look at it. I'm just reading from the Canon Europe site here because they seem to have the specs up pretty well now. So we've got 8K internal and external RAW. 8K internal and external RAW recording at up to 29.97 frames per second, and 4K at up to 120 frames per second. So then there's a little asterisk, and down below it says that the external recording is only available up to 60 or 59.94 in 4K. So they've given a bit of a caveat there that it'll only shoot, it's going to do better internal than it will external, which is mind-blowing. Because as we know with this, to get 10-bit out of the EOS R, we need the external recorder because it doesn't do it internal. And that's probably a limitation of the SD cards, whereas this has got the CF Express. And that was the other announcement. It's going to have an SDXC or whatever, SDHC, I don't know, the fast SD, and also the CF Express, which is the new small form factor CF cards. And then it goes on to say in 422, so it does all of that in 422 10-bit Canon log or 422 10-bit HDR PQ. Now, HDR is like a H.265 codec. So there's still a little bit of, like editing power you need and computer power you need for H.265, but the 10-bit 422 is going to be beautiful. I love the Canon log already. So if it's C-Log 1, I'm happy with that. I like the implementation of that. And it's gotten better, I feel, from the 5D4 now to the EOS R. It's gotten a little bit better. And so I believe the R5, I know the 1DX Mark III is nice as well. And I believe the R5 is going to be similar to the 1DX Mark III implementation, which is really good. I've had a friend, Tyler Edwards, you should check out his channel. He does a lot of great content on filmmaking and camera gear and stuff like that. He's talked about the 1DX Mark III, saying the image is beautiful, marries up really nicely with C200 and even C500 that he was shooting on recently. And he got to shoot on C700. Oh, I wish. Recently, so that was cool. But yeah, basically, it's going to marry up really nicely with, footage from higher end cameras. And I feel like as a camera to the EOS R, like if I can manage to keep one of these and get the EOS R5, then I think that'll be a good kind of setup for lots of things. Lots of things to come. So, that's all I think in terms of the specs they've announced. So we don't know what sort of codec that will be. I'm sure it's going to be a big file, big codec. Canon always outdoes it with the amount of data you need. So that's going to add that expense of the CF Express cards, which is going to be expensive. They'll be like $1,000 plus Aussie dollars to get a couple of decent sized cards that you can run all day with these cameras or with the R5. But I feel like, if it's sitting around $4,000 or $5,000, I really think that's a price point that's going to appeal to a lot of people, and I feel like I can get in at that price point too. If it's 6 or 7, then I feel like that's a bit out of my reach, and I could just stick with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera for most of our stuff. That we need that raw capability, and then the EOS R's anything to do with editing, smaller projects and some of the client work we do, some piece to cameras and events. I shot with this recently at an event, and this was kind of locked off with the long lens, and it beat out the Blackmagic image, and it beat out some Olympus cameras that we had by miles, And when I say beat out the Blackmagic image, it was just the kind of conditions of the shoot, the lighting, the way that the room was, and this with a 7200 f2.8 and the autofocus that it has for the talking head stuff, it just shone. It was just awesome compared to what the other two cameras could pull off, getting focus, critical focus, and just setting the camera up, hitting go, and then only worrying about it every 30 minutes when I had to hit record again. That was just awesome. It was really rock solid. So that was good. Galterius asked a question here about the batteries. We don't know yet. I would say that these are going to be the LPE6N. I don't know that for sure. That hasn't been announced, but the form factor just is you know, this so similar to this, and there's been photos from an event, I think it was NAB or something like that, where they had photos of the EOS R5. So the form factor was still so similar to this. So potentially they've upped the capacity of the battery. I know on the 1DX Mark III, they've incredibly, I don't know how they did it, but that from the 1DX Mark II to the 1DX Mark III, they've increased the battery by like 30%. So same battery, but they've just made the camera maybe more efficient or something like that. So I believe that there'll be more efficiency. But one of the things with the EOS R is I've never really had a problem with the battery life with this camera. These batteries tend to last a couple of hours, and I've never really had an issue. And now I've got the battery grip as well. So I'm assuming they'll come out with the battery grip as well. So, you know, for shoots of 4 to 5 hours and stuff, you can run with just a single battery grip, 2 batteries in there. So I think that the LP E6N, I've got a bunch of them. So, you know, I own like 12 of those batteries. So, and as well, they go into like Magic Pocket Cinema camera. So hopefully they do stick with that battery. But yeah. So Cinechimp, you're asking, is that with the recorder or internal? Yeah, I think there's the ability to record 8K 10-bit 422 internal, and that's up to 30 frames per second or 29.97. And then there's the ability to record 4K 120, so 120 frames per second internal in 4K. That's the specs. And then externally with the recorder, if you already own a recorder, you'll be able to do 10-bit 422 up to 60 or 59.97 frames per second. So this camera, the R5, is going to record better internally than it does externally, which is mind-blowing. It's probably the first camera that's going to be like this, which is really, really cool. Yeah, Lucas. Yeah, I agree, man. It's going to be a massive file size, and I think that's what we've come to know with Canon is that 1DX Mark III RAW is amazing, RAW internal, awesome, but you're going to chew up a card in like 10 minutes. You know, a 600, I think 650, what is it, 512? Sorry, gig card. You know, maybe there's 15 minutes of record time on that. So I've just ordered a new RAID array. You know, because I've been running like 8 terabyte RAID arrays and backing that up to an external drive, and that's going to be my working RAID for editing and stuff. And I keep filling it up like 3 or 4 months, and I fill it up. So I've just ordered a 6-bay from the US. Hopefully, in this whole Corona thing, it still comes quickly. But that's because I'm going to be shooting a lot more on Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. I've got like 12 houses I'm going to be shooting coming up. So amazing that I've landed that contract. But that's going to be like 300 to 400 gigs per house. So then once I edit it down and everything like that and do all the exports, it's, you know, probably blowed out to like 350 to 400 gigs per project. So editing space, having lots of hard drives is just part of the game. So, but I'm assuming that this is going to be a massive file size. But, you know, and this is a fear that I have, speaking into that still, Lucas, is that one thing I feel like they might do is they may actually give us a crappy codec in 8K. So it's like, oh, it's got 8K, but it's like something that we would probably rather use 4K instead of the 8K because it's just a better codec. You know, I know with the EOS R, the 1080 codec in this upscaled, the All-I codec upscaled to 4K actually is very close to 4K. It looks very close to the 4K codec because obviously we know the 4K has got a crop, so it crops in. So the 1080 codec is one thing that I love about this camera, the EOS R. So this is going to be something that we, you know, tossing up between, okay, is it worth shooting in 8K with the massive file size just to get that tiny bit more quality, you know, depending on the codec, that will be, you know, much of a muchness. And I feel like not a lot of people will probably shoot in 8K. You know, yes, people coming from a Red or coming from having had the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, the 6K stabilizer is a bit better. So maybe if there's a crop in or something in firmware where you can get a 6K image from it, that might be usable. But would I shoot in 8K a lot? Probably not. Maybe if it's an interview scenario where I want a wide shot and a tight shot, so 2 kind of shots from one camera, and then the client wants me to deliver that in 4K, maybe. But yeah, that's a good question. Stefano, price. Yeah, you know, I was just saying that before. I think this is going to kind of take the place of where the 1DX Mark II sits right now, whether that's brand new or on the second-hand market. And I feel like that's about $5,000 to $6,000. The reason why I don't think it's going to be 3,000, and I'm talking in Aussie dollars, but you know, say if I say 5,000, that's probably 4,000 US. The reason I think it's going to sit there is because right now you've still got the 5D Mark IV and the EOS R. The EOS R is sitting at like two grand. 5D Mark IV is maybe at $3,000. This would have to be with the specs it's got to be at least 4. You know, and then I think we always get stung because we have to add a little bit more. So for us, the 1DX Mark III is actually 11,500 here. Might have been a little cheaper now. Maybe we can get it for like 10,000, 10,500 or something like that, Aussie dollars. So I feel like the R5 has to sit somewhere between the 1DX Mark III and the current market for the second-hand 1DX Mark II, EOS R, 5D Mark IV. So I feel like that's where it's going to fit. And so in my head, I'm thinking, you know, $6,000. But what happens is I kind of always downrate what they'll release it at, and then they end up releasing it higher, like they did with the 1DX Mark III. So potentially, this camera is probably going to be about 7,000, 7,500 Aussie dollars, which landed around 6,000 US. That's all speculative. Don't take my word for it. I have no idea, but that's just my kind of gut feel on it. So don't be surprised if it's more than what you think it should be for where it's going to fit in the market. But as we know, RF lenses are more expensive. I believe RF bodies are going to kind of fit between, you know, the 5D level cameras and then their kind of top tier 1DX Mark III now. So yeah, don't be too surprised if it's more expensive than you think. Yeah, Mike, you've said maybe you can also connect an SSD. Yeah, you know, that would be really good. That would be amazing. There's actually, you guys should check out right now on Kickstarter. There's a program for SSDs. If you're editing, want to do fast editing, or you're using a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, they brought out a 4 terabyte drive. So it's a Kickstarter campaign right now. They keep impressioning me on Instagram because I bought a bunch of drives and I bought a new RAID setup. But I was going to get it. It was like the early bird was $350, I think it was. This is not sponsored or anything like that either. I just saw it and thought I'd share. But yeah, that'd be cool to have 4 terabyte, you know, like a little SSD like the Samsung. I think it fits in the small rig cage that the Samsung has as well. Anyway, check it out. It's I don't know what it's called or anything, but it's just look for SSD on Kickstarter and back that if you need like large, you know, storage SSDs. But yeah, Canon have kind of never done that where they've recorded to an SSD storage. They always utilize their HDMI out, you know, to record, or an SDI out of their bigger cinema line cameras to record to a external recorder. So I feel like going that way, like Blackmagic have, I'm not sure that Canon will go that way. Be good if they did, be great. But yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, Mike, the EOS R5, it's announced. If you check out the Canon Europe's website, and I just read that out too, that this is going to do, I can read it again. So 8K internal and external RAW recording at up to 29.97 frames per second and 4K at up to 120 frames per second. Then it gives a little caveat down the bottom that says the external recording is only up to 60 frames per second or 59.94, the 4K. So, but it's going to do 120 frames per second in 4K, 10-bit 422. So, it's awesome. I just read that again though. You know, they call RAW recording, they call C-Log RAW. So just so you know, it might not be like the 1DX Mark III that actually is actual RAW TIFFs or whatever they are, like raw images. This might be like they might be talking about C-Log because they have mixed RAW and C-Log together sometimes. So C-Log is not RAW. C-Log is like a different sensor, logarithmic sensor algorithm that maps, you know, the image differently to like a normal standard image. So, but just so that you know that that wording could be a bit messy. But check it out for yourself on the Canon Europe website where the announcement was made. So, R5 will cost €4,500. Yep. R6 will be 2.5. Yeah, that's probably €4,500. I think that's about $7 grand. I think, is it Aussie dollars? Yeah, so I think you're probably pretty right there. Maybe the R6 will be a little higher than that. I think the specs on the R6 might be a little higher, so it might be like €3,000 for the R6. But yeah, I think for the R5 could be pretty right. So yeah, that it's quite incredible. Like when I read it, I was like, nah, this can't be right. But I was saying before, Mike, that I think potentially what might happen is they might give you these specs and then say, oh, the codec for 8K isn't very good. It's soft, you know. And so what I was saying in the R5 is, the EOS R is, I tend to like the full HD all-eye codec more than the 4K cropped codec. And I use 4K still. I do on this camera quite a lot, but I like the full HD codec because it's a nice high bit rate. So that might be a thing where they give us 8K, but they compress it so hard that it's really better to use the 4K. And then it's just a marketing thing where, yes, we can do it. The sensor's big enough. We can do it, but it's not like we'll use it a lot, you know? So that's where I think, yeah, we'll find out when it gets announced. But yeah, good point. Yeah, Adam Moss. Luke just made a comment. Lucas, sorry. He said that good luck now selling Adam Moss Ninjas. It's funny because there's going to be a fire sale of EOS Rs, 5D Mark IVs, 1DX Mark IIs, Atomos recorders, literally. So if you've got them and you're looking at the R5, I'd sell them now while you don't have any work right now in this pandemic. Try and get rid of that gear now, and so you can have a bit of cash ready to go. When Canon do drop it. Now, it's funny because they announced a big announcement like this before the 1DX Mark III dropped, and they announced it, and it was funny because I was like, oh, it'll be another month, you know, or 6 weeks or 8 weeks before the 1DX Mark III drops, and literally like 2 weeks later, it was like bang, on the market, pre-orders were coming through. So I'd say get ready, you know, maybe a month or two, and I reckon I'll be dropping this as a kind of, yeah, little buffer, I reckon, between what's happening right now, trying to generate some sales in this crazy time of year and time in the world. So, yeah. The low light, yeah, just Kunal, is it how you say it? Yeah, the price isn't announced yet, so we're kind of speculating like I'm saying between $4,000 and $6 $4,000 and $6,000 somewhere between there, but it's all speculative. We don't know that for sure. Roughly 5K plus of that in Europe. Yeah, Cine chip. Yeah, that's probably pretty close to what I think it would land. Yeah. Arthur's good question about low light. I feel like this is going to be pretty good in low light. The EOS R, compared to the 5D Mark IV. Now, it's so funny I say this because I just edited a project that we shot some nighttime band kind of scenes of a guy called Guy Sebastian here in Australia, pretty good singer and songwriter and stuff, and he was at this event that we were privileged to shoot. Anyway, I had to run off back, it was on the Gold Coast, so I had to run off back home, and a friend of mine shot it on his 5D Mark IV, and the footage is absolutely unreal. And I just remember how much I loved that camera when I had it. And it really, if you use it the right way and have the settings dialed in, man, out of camera in, I got him to shoot in a standard picture profile. I gave him the settings to shoot in because I knew what I wanted, and I knew what I'd shot the 2 days earlier with on the EOS R, and I wanted to match up with that. And he shot the whole gig with it like that on a Ronin stabilizer. And he's got good lenses. He's got Sigma 85, I think Sigma 35 1.4, or maybe it is, and a couple of L series lenses from Canon. But the footage is just awesome, and there's no grain in the blacks. There's no aliasing. It's just unreal. And so I feel like Canon have got there with the EOS R, because I remember the C-Log on the 5D had issues, like we all know that. but I still used it and loved it. And you know, a lot of my content was around that. But the C-Log on the EOS R is awesome. Like, there's not a lot of issues with it. There is if you like shoot in 100 ISO and not 400 ISO, and you know, if compression in YouTube obviously gives banding. We know this. So all these things kind of make it not as good when you look at much online. But generally speaking, what comes out of camera and what I deliver to clients in like high res is awesome in this camera. So I feel like that's where Canon sits now, and I would hope that they can even improve that even better. So, you know, high ISO on this is really clean, quite clean. In standard picture profiles anyway, you really not see noise until 6,500 plus ISO. So yeah, in that regard, I feel like they're going to nail the low light capabilities and just lensing up in low light, as we know, using a 1.4, 1.8, you know, 2.8 minimum aperture probably in low light, and you're going to get good results for sure. So dynamic range, Mike said, will be of the C300 Mark III. Dynamic range of the C300 Mark III is 16 plus stops. Yeah, I kind of wonder if they're going to push the limit a little bit of what they've given us in the EOS R, and I would hope that they would. I know a friend's using the 1DX Mark III, and that is, he's saying, I don't know, they're saying 12 stops, but he's saying he's feeling like he's getting more range out of that, and he's 5D Mark IV user. That's Tyler Edwards. If you want to check out his channel, he's got some good content on the 1DX Mark III. But I think it's going to be on par with that, because they've got the sensor technology now. There's no use of them putting in like a subgrade sensor in this thing and crippling it in that regard. So I think they're going to give us like what we see in the 1DX Mark III, which is going to be 12 stops, you know, at best. At worst, and maybe 13 to 14 at best. So I think it's going to be pretty. I've even thought in the back of my mind, you know, the BMCC 6K, great as it is, and as great as it's been for us in what we've produced. I'm like, if I get the R5 and it does what I want it to do in shooting houses and shooting content outside, and gives me a bit more capability than, you know, what the EOS R does, then I'll be getting it, and maybe flicking on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema, just because of all the little things. You know, you got to have the SD, and you got to have the battery. We got a battery thing we put on top, and it's just not like a grab it and run, you know, and go. So yeah, if the R5 can do it and has, you know, probably 13 stops is about what we need to get a good shoot of a house, and you know, do sort of interviews outside and those sort of things where we want that image quality and not have like blown out and blurred back, you know, blown out highlights and stuff, then yeah, the R5 might do it. So it'll be a trial. It'll be a sell off an EOS R or two and get that first and have it as a second camera to the Blackmagic, and then evaluating from there, seeing some test footage from it, which hopefully will be out within months. Yeah, so it's cool. More resolution, you probably introduce more grain. Yeah, I feel like there's something pleasing about the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera grain. Same as a red, when I've shot on red before. There's something really nice about it. So you're getting more resolution, and it's more detail, and you can, you know, sharper images, let's say. But you're getting that grain because the image has to kind of break up a little bit to give you that sharpness and that edge detail. So I feel like if it's not pleasing, if it's blocky and Sony uses Sony-like, digital-like, then, you know, blocky and skin tones and blotchy, then it won't really be good. But I feel like Canon's got that down, so I feel like it's going to be pleasing. I like C-Log. I like the grain in C-Log. That's why I don't really overcorrect my footage when I do get grain from ISO or grain from kind of a underexposed image. I don't correct it too much. I don't over smooth it or anything like that, because I don't mind how it looks. So yeah, it could be good. Could be good. Rodrigo, dynamic range in photo and video mode. Yeah, not sure. I'm saying I think it'll probably be pretty on par with the 1DX Mark III. So what are we talking, 12 or 13 stops? Yeah, definitely that, you know, 12 stops at a minimum, I think, on the R5. But purely speculative. Haven't seen the numbers on that yet. So C-Log in 10-bit with the EOS R is 13. Yeah, so I feel like it'll be at least that in C-Log, and you know, we can stretch it a little further, I think, when we know what we're doing with the image. So potentially 13 or 14 stops pretty easily. What else we got here? How long have we been streaming for here? Cool, 35 minutes. All going good, all healthy, still running, which is good. I had 2 streams drop out of me today already, so I really want to get this stream up and chat to you guys, so that's cool. Mike, you're asking who uses EOS R with the Ronin S. Yeah, I do. I shot an event recently on it. I just actually recently got it just over here. Got it to run the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera on it for what we do with our home walkthrough shoots. We're doing like a big contract of 12 houses, and I just wanted to get some efficiency around how I was doing it. I was using a glide cam, just the old handheld glide cam, non-mechanical one, because I like the feel of that footage better than a Ronin. But I'll probably do only like the real clutch walking, moving shots with the glide cam, and I'll do a lot more of the panning and stuff now with the Ronin. So it's just a matter of getting used to it and getting better at using it. So, but I put the EOS R on it, and I was able to connect it to the focus wheel, because it came with a focus wheel, and it was epic. Like for the sort of stuff we did with this event, where I was just kind of walking around with it and stuff, it was awesome. So yeah, I love that setup, really good. The friend who shot for me the last day of the event, he had the 5D Mark IV with the Ronin S, and he got amazing footage, super stable footage as well. So that was really good. Super Clarky, how you going, mate? Thanks for jumping on, eh? Appreciate your comment across on the other videos as well. 1DX3 has a full range out of 128 to 1016. Seems different to other C-Log outputs. I think it's going to be close. Yeah, I feel like they want this R5 to sit in this pocket between, say, where the 5D Mark IV is now and the 1DX Mark III is, but I don't see them needing to downgrade the sensor capabilities to have it in that range. So if we're talking like $5 or $6 grand Aussie, we know we get stung here for it. I reckon it'll be the sensor, a close second to the 1DX Mark III. So I feel like it'll get that range that we're looking for, and it'll beat out the EOS R5 in C-Log. The EOS R in C-Log. And it'll match more closely with the Cine line of cameras in the 1DX Mark III. So that's my thoughts on it. Don't know. I haven't talked to anyone from Canon. This is not sponsored, by the way. I haven't said that yet. This is not sponsored. Just a Canon fanboy. So yeah, and from the specs that have come out, I will be getting on the bandwagon on this, because I think it's great. So yeah. So what else we got? Too small to have big dynamic range. C300 Mark III is only 8.8 megapixels. Yeah, good point. Cinechimp makes the point that, an 8K sensor, it's going to be super small photo sites to make it happen. But yeah, I think you're going to be surprised. I think Canon have what I'm afraid of, speaking into that. So basically, what we're talking about is an 8K sensor is going to have a lot of pixels, I guess you call them, or photo sites. And then you got to somehow get that smooth. So it's going to be super sharp, and you got to somehow get that smooth. I think that's kind of what we're saying. So I know on Sony, it's kind of, they have a 6K sensor and they downscale to 4K. I think that's right. And that in that downscaling, we had the overheating issues and stuff with Sony's, because there's a lot of processing that takes place with that. So yeah, getting that sensor. Getting it to be have the dynamic range in such a big megapixel. We don't know what the megapixel of it is yet, so we're not sure that. So I'm not sure how they're going to do that magic, but it's all gonna. We'll find out soon, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah, this Mike saying here, and Lucas, I'll come back to you in one sec. Mike saying here that he has the Sigma 35mm 1.4 on the R with the Ronin S, and that's a great setup. That's an awesome setup. That's what these shots I think were taken of this event, and that just looked awesome. Looked really good. And when your focus is locked on, as we know, the super sharp lens locked on focus. Yeah, beautiful setup. Lucas, how do you guys set up your focus wheel with the R? So basically, I just plug in the cable that comes with the Ronin. There's a cable that comes with it and plugs in, and it goes into the USB C into the camera. And then what I do is I run it as a manual focus if I'm doing anything that doesn't really have people in it, or if I'm running from around people. And this is kind of specific to the shoot that I've done on it. So yeah, if I'm running around people or kind of doing an event, then I set my focus to however far away they are with the wheel. And I put focus peaking on so I can see where my focus is, and then I kind of maintain that focus distance. But then if I'm doing anything where I'm tracking someone, or even from behind, the face tracking works and kind of grabs onto their head, locks on pretty well. So anything like that, I just flick it over to face tracking. And yeah, it seems to work really well. So that's, I think you can do it with manual. So you flick it to manual, and then you have the control manually, and then you flick it to AF, and that would be in face tracking normally. Or sometimes I use single point, but usually face tracking. So try that, see if that helps you. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks for stopping in. I'm gonna wrap it up soon as well. It's 10:40 here, so pretty late. So I'm gonna get some sleep soon. But I hope you're doing well through isolation, man, and keep on keeping on. Super Clarky's asked here, do you think they'll need to release a more powerful battery for it? Not going to be sipping the power riding that 4K, that 8K. Yeah, definitely. I was talking about that. I feel like what I've seen of the camera, the photos, it's same form factor, a little bit smoother and a few other things than the EOS R, but I feel like it's going to be the LPE6N. But with the 1DX Mark III, I don't know what it is, but new technology or something, it's the same battery with the 1DX Mark III, but they've gotten like 30% more juice out of it. And with the knowledge that that thing's shooting 5.5K RAW, and it's got the 10-bit capabilities internal, so utilizing that level of battery for the 1DX Mark III, I don't see why they can't get the energy savings and everything into the R5 and have it be a bit better battery life. And if it's on par with the EOS R, then I'm happy, because I've just picked up the new one I'm shooting this on with the battery grip, so that's awesome. That does me well, and it lasts for like 5 hours with the battery, 4 hours maybe when you're pushing it with the battery grip. So that's more than enough for me. And I've got a bunch of LPE6 and LPE6N batteries, so please Canon, don't change the battery. But yeah, I think they'll do pretty well with getting it to be energy efficient, so no issues there. Yes, Lucas, do that, because as soon as I bought mine, I went to Ronin and updated it. I was trying to get it to work with the BMP-CC, because someone was saying, oh yeah, I've got it to work with it on some forum somewhere deep on the dark interwebs, but I couldn't get it working. So I just wanted it to have the ability to, is it manually focus, or I wanted it to charge the battery, but didn't do that. And yeah, I don't know, I think manually focus my L series glass. So I could just kind of do manual focus, but didn't work for whatever reason. But the EOS R works on that for sure if you upgrade the firmware on it. So yeah. Sakib, is that how you say your name? Sakib Ali? Yeah, we're all kind of in that boat now where we're waiting really about the EOS R5 to be released. You've asked here, would my EOS R suffice as a B camera in terms of using the same RF lenses? Yeah, so I think it will. I think the C-Log, what I've talked about in the rest of the stream, is that C-Log on the EOS R is great. Like, compared to when it came from the 5D to the EOS R, the implementation is really good, solid, And you could definitely get the R5 as your A cam and still use the EOS R. You know, like Peter McKinnon, he vlogs with this. Matty Hopoya vlogs with this. A lot of, and they match that up with their piece to camera content, which is most of them are shooting on a C200 or a C500, which is the Cineline cameras. And you wouldn't, unless you knew, you know, exactly what they were shooting what on, you wouldn't really be able to tell. They match up really well. Matty Hopoya as well. He's kind of like me, where he loves the 10-bit, the 1080, which is the full HD that comes out of this camera, and then he upscales that to 4K for all his vlogs. So he just shoots in 1080p and upscales it, and it looks great. Like, it's got that cinematic look to it, a bit softer than you would get from a 4K image, but otherwise it looks awesome. So that's what he does. So yeah, you could use your RF lenses that you already have with the EOS R, and then just get the EOS R5 as your kind of A camera, and it will step up the game a bit for that, definitely. Yeah, CF Express cards are so expensive, aren't they? And that's another hit you take when you get it. So I think all up, you know, EOS R5, what's the real cost? EOS R5, a couple of RF lenses, you know, here, like, to get a, I've got the cheapest one, which is an incredible lens, a 35 1.4 RF. Love it. Probably my new favorite lens. My old favorite lens is in here. Let me show you. This is my actual favorite lens, the 24mm f1.4 Canon L. This is the Series 2. Best lens. If you haven't got a good L series lens yet and you're wanting to get one, start with this lens, because you can do so much with it, so versatile. And on the, as we know, on the EOS R, you've got the crop factor in 4K, and then this turns into like what, 36mm or something like that. So brilliant for that. But the RF 1.8 35mm, which I'm shooting this on right now, is awesome. So I feel like the cost is up there to get going with RF glass and the R5. So, okay, you got the R5. Let's say it's $5,000. Let's say they do really well. $5,000 Aussie, excellent. Then add a lens, a couple of grand. So you got 5, 7. Struggling with maths right now. It's pretty late. Then you add what else? You got to get your cards, your CF cards, CF Express. So add one of those plus a faster SD card, because you know you're going to want to shoot 4K on the SD card, or hopefully it does what the 1DX3 does, which is shoot ProRes onto one and then high raw, high bit rate or whatever HDR on the other. So anyway, so you add the cards, another, let's say, $1,200 or maybe $1,500. So you looking at $10,000. Get your ND filters that are all different to your EF glass, or stepper rings. You know, you can get stepper rings. Yeah, it's going to be up there. But you could sell your Atomos Ninjas, get rid of them, and you could sell off your EF glass. So maybe, I don't know, maybe get out of it for like $6,000 with the upgrade. Who knows? But yeah. Well, thank you all. A couple more questions here, and then I'll jump out here. CF Express cards not that much more expensive than equivalent high spec USB 2 card. That's a good point, D. Yeah. Thanks, Sakib. Yeah, great to have you on, man. Thank you. Did you rate the RF 1535? Yeah, RF 1535 is unreal lens. I haven't used it. I've only looked at reviews and footage on it, so I've never actually used it with the camera. So I'm not sure how it goes, you know, in the field. And yeah, I'm kind of a prime lens guy. So right now this is the 17-40, like beat down, old. It's got a chip on the lens. Super old L series, but still great image. But I'm not a big fan of like a small compact zoom. I love big zooms. I love 7200 zoom and stuff, but I'm more of a prime lens kind of guy when it comes to yeah, like that. You know, this kind of thing. 24mm. I've got the Leica 12mm 0D, 50mm 1.8, 50mm 1.4 L series. Now the 35 f1.8. So I'm kind of more of a prime lens guy. So I probably wouldn't get the RF 1535. I'd be more inclined to get the Big Daddy, the 28 to 70 f2. Is that what it is? 28 70 f2 RF. Yeah, like sell your house to get one because they're like $4,000, but I'd be more inclined to get that than the 15-35. But the 15-35 is a really good lens. It's got image stabilization as well. Is that the one? Image stabilization? Yeah. That's an awesome lens. And that's predominantly what you'll see big vloggers, Peter McKinnon, Matty Poyer, they'll be running those. So great image, awesome quality. Now I'm live streaming. I can. It's funny, Sakib, you asked that because I dropped my live stream actually twice today. So I don't know, something happened to my computer, it crashed, and then the first time the audio wasn't working. So, but right now using the EOS R, and it's going through an Elgato Camlink, and then I'm plumbing the audio from a Rode NTG2 through the camera and back through the HDMI so that it matches up the feed. Yep, going longer than 30 minutes. So right now the camera is, the back screen on the camera or the flip screen on the camera is off completely. I can't see. So I could reach out and touch it and turn it back on because it's just over there a bit. But I'm happy that I know we're at 51 minutes and I'm still running, the stream's still running. I can see my OBS is still live, so the camera's still doing its job, even though the back screen turns off after 30 minutes. So I did a video, my last video, if you want to check it out, on how I live stream and what the setup is. So check that out if you want to know more. Yeah, it's a good setup, solid setup. It didn't work today. It's twice I tried to live stream this and it didn't work. So, but anyway, you get that. So, okay. So specifically, how you get it to not cut out is it will the screen will turn off, but the camera will stay on, and you have to have it to disable, to power off to never. I think power off to never, and screen off to the maximum, which is 30 minutes. And if you've got a HDMI running out of it, it will keep that HDMI feed live. So even though the screen turns off. So if you're like in this scenario, I could reach out and like come right close to you guys and like hit the shutter button to bring the back screen back. But I'm happy right now. I can see my monitoring here and all's good. I know the stream's still live. So if it drops out right now, that means the battery's died. So I don't really know right now my battery status. That's the only thing, but I've got the battery grip in, so I know it's running. It's got plenty of juice. It'll run for another hour, so happy days. McGregor Gascoigne, how expensive? Yeah, we're talking about that before. Don't know, like I feel like this is gonna sit between the 1DX Mark III and the 5D Mark IV, because 5D Mark IV is kind of still up there in price. EOS R has kind of come down in price, you know, $2,000 or whatever it is for an EOS R body. So I feel like this is going to be, yeah, upwards of $5,000, 5-6 maybe 7,000 Aussie dollars, somewhere like that. I think it's going to hit us a little bit hard in terms of what the price is, just like the 1DX Mark II or the 1DX Mark III did for me. It hit me pretty hard. I was thinking 7 or 8 grand Aussie, and I could have probably managed that at the time, but when it was like 11.5 grand Aussie dollars, I was just like, no, you can have it. So stick with the EOS R. So cool. Thanks, Super Clarky. Thanks, mate. Thanks for coming online, and stay safe. Yeah, keep safe, man. Hopefully soon all this crap will be lifted and we'll be able to get back to normal a bit. So. Awesome. Well, guys, that's all. I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming in, checking out the stream. Haven't done a lot of these recently, but I've got it set up now that I want to do more. And yeah, I hope you got something out of it, and good to connect with some of you. Yeah, I've been a bit MIA and just building my business and trying to get through this lockdown period. Hope you're all staying safe and that you haven't lost any loved ones, that everyone around you is safe as well. So be good, and we'll see you in the next one. I'm going to cancel the stream, and yeah, thanks again for checking it out. Cheers.